Hi, Professor. I want to thank you for going ahead and giving me the opportunity to redo my Chapter 7 reflection, as I had done Chapter 8 accidentally for the last week's reflection in regards to one child, two languages. In the other reflection, I did complete the reflection on the other readings. I had just done the wrong chapter. But I want to go ahead and just talk about Chapter 7 now, with it, which is the curriculum. Pretty much what stood out most to me during the curriculum is that any time of the day could be used to go ahead and help the students out that are learning a new language. For example, during activity time, children are actually able to interact with their environment, the children around them, and be able to go ahead and try and explore their new language by mimicking or trying to start conversations with other children. Um, Teacher directed activities, I feel, are very important. Um, it's a very useful technique that teachers actually use. For example, if I'm a teacher and my student is learning English for the first time, and I'm grabbing, for example, the highlighter, I've used this example before, I could say, this is a purple highlighter. We're going to highlight this sentence. And eventually the child will grasp that this is a highlighter. Color is obviously purple. And you use a highlighter to highlight important things within a sentence. And then there's also child-initiated activities. This is more when the child finally fit in with the English-speaking students within the classroom, and the English-speaking students actually incorporate them in their play and in their language and have conversations with them. Conversation may not be very full of detail or magnificent, but they will be able to converse, and the child that's learning English for the first time will be able to have the opportunity to practice their English, practice using different words. And in most cases, children that do speak English will go ahead and correct the child if they use the wrong word or use the sentence inappropriately or, during their conversations. Book reading time, very important time for children, as during book reading they'll be able to associate, I'm so sorry, they'll be able to associate pictures, words, and meaning of context meaning. For example, it says here that during book reading time, if you have children that are learning a new language, it is important to keep it nice and short. Consider small group reading. This would I would personally do small groups when reading books, especially if I have English language learners in my classroom, because I would not want my other students to be delayed because I'm trying to teach these students this new language. Not that there will be any large separation between them, but we as teachers, we already do small groups. We already do small groups for intervention. We do small groups for simply just to get more hands-on with the children and be able to interact with them more on a 1-to-1 level as compared to a 1-to-30 level. So during the small group time, I would probably get all my students together that are within the same reading range, or all my students that are like English language learners, and pick out a book that's simple enough for them to understand, and but still challenging enough to make them try to understand new concepts. Of course, choosing the book, you have to be very careful when choosing a book. We have to make sure that the content within the book has been reviewed, vocabulary length, any special features, and even cultural sensitivity has to be something that is looked at when we're picking out a book, especially for English language learners, because some culture might be even conflicting. They might not understand the concepts of Thanksgiving, because some countries don't celebrate Thanksgiving. Some countries don't even, that doesn't exist at all. And then they come to this country, and now Thanksgiving is something that they have to learn about. And maybe that's a book that I would choose so that they get to know our culture. Because learning a new language isn't just learning the new language itself, it's learning a new culture. So it's very good to always integrate parts of our culture into what they're learning so that they're able to learn the new language, especially when they're younger children. It is easier to get them to become accustomed to our culture and the way we speak and even our accents. Um, Another thing that I mentioned here during reading time is to talk about the story rather than just reading it. Uh, Basically, instead of just sitting here and reading, the wheels on the bus go round and round, ask the child, oh, what do you think is happening there? What do you see here? And then that not only allows them to try to make sense of what they're looking at, but they'll be able to actually also use their newfound vocabulary words and figure out, okay, bus, that bus picture goes with the word bus, and wheels, that's what a wheel looks like. Even though they know these words, I'm sure, in their own language, in their native tongue, but they do not know the words in their new language. And that's a great way to get them to practice it and make make an understanding of the book that's being read to them. The book should be read more than once, because the first time that you read a book, it's kind of like, oh wow, okay, but then you read the book the second time and then you start noticing other details. Even that happens to us. I could only imagine as an English language learner, if you read the book for a second time, there's things that you might have learned between the first and second time that you could put into context reading the book again, and you make more sense of the book and more understanding. And then you could also encourage them to simply just read to one another. The key thing to learning a new language is putting it into practice. And if the child's able to put it into practice, then I feel that they'll be able to become successful and learn the new language at a faster rate. And then it talks about, the rest of the chapter kind of goes on to talk about snack and lunch time as well as outside time. During these times, it's children are being provided the opportunity to interact with one another, and also the teacher could even use these chances to teach them something new. For example, the teacher could ask, oh, what is that vegetable called? Which one? The green one. And then you tell them broccoli or spinach, and they'll be able to try and say it back to you. And now they've created a new meaning for this vegetable that they see every day. They know it probably in another language, but they didn't know it in English. And now they're able to connect a word to an object. Circle time is also very important. With circle time, it's important to stay on routine, have a lot of songs and movements that are predictable for the child, and always introduce the theme. For example, in most preschools now, the theme is Halloween. So the teachers will be talking about pumpkins, for example, and their lifespan. So that's a good way to introduce a theme into circle time. Just talk about the pumpkin and how it grows into a plant, and then it starts growing bigger, the leaves and the actual pumpkin forms. But it's always good to have pictures and songs and things like that for the child to be able to identify better with it, and not just simply be feeding them information. It's also about allowing them to grasp the information and relay it back. That's why songs are a great way to help children learn a new language, because it's so repetitive. Most songs for young children have the same words over and over and over. They'll use the same sound, they'll use the same words, and that allows them to memorize it. So then if you add meaning to those words that they're singing, they're able to later on use those words in a sentence or in a conversation with somebody. And then something else that jumped out at me that I thought was very important is to the development for second language learners, literacy development. It basically states here that it's important to have activities that target letter recognition, activities that emphasize sounds that make up words, activities that show how books look and how they work, activities that emphasize words and their meaning, and then activities that encourage telling stories. Basically, all these activities are things that I just mentioned. So get them to learn the alphabet, get them to learn how to pronounce the alphabet properly. Phonological awareness is very important at that. If they're younger, they'll be able to even have our accent. They won't have an accent as if they came from a different country. if if you have books with good concept and good print, they'll be able to make more meaning of it. And then of course they learn new vocabulary, and then with the storytelling they'll be able to do more of discourse. They'll be able to have conversation. They'll be able to do what we're doing now. They'll be able to sit here in front of a phone and talk and explain their reasoning, explain the context of the book, explain what their thoughts are and how they are relating it to something else, something previously learned. Once you have that down packed with the children, it becomes a lot easier for them to understand moving forward. I've also seen videos of teachers that use memorization almost. They'll, for example, have the children sing a phrase or connect a word to an image of some sort that's not necessarily the same thing as the picture. I've seen videos where the teacher is teaching new vocabulary words to the classroom and the child's not allowed to speak. They're only allowed to point at things to make it, to explain the definition of it. For example, if it's given painful, the child might go like that and then kind of rub it and make sad faces because they're trying to explain that they're sad and it hurts. And it's kind of a way to have the children interact with one another, have them get up and motivated and have fun while still learning. But there's just so many ways to incorporate all of this into our curriculum, and it's important to incorporate it into our curriculum for the English language learners while still not holding back our regular students. I feel that that's extremely important. Sometimes we lose track of, we're trying to focus so much on just the 4, 5, 6 kids that we have in the classroom that either are in an RTI program, are in an IEP, or are in English language learners, that we sometimes fail to realize that we also have other children in the classroom. We have to be able to find a way to kind of meet everybody halfway. It's not easy. That's why some schools do provide those programs where they'll pull the ELLs into a different classroom for the day and do what I just explained, going further in depth with vocabulary, alphabet, phonological awareness, conversational skills, rather than taking time from the general education teacher to do that. But some schools do not provide that. Some schools in the United States that do not have many immigrant students do not have these extra classes. For example, here in Miami, almost every school has that. But you go up north and a lot of schools may not have that option for teachers. So it has to be a happy medium, and as an educator, we have to be able to properly find a way to teach all our students. But curriculum is very important when it comes to actually teaching our children a new language. It goes hand in hand with support, family support, and just the child actually wanting to learn a new language. But those are my thoughts and opinions about chapter 7. I thought it was a very interesting chapter, definitely. And it goes hand in hand with what was read, the other articles for the last week. And yeah, thank you again for letting me do this, and have a good weekend. Bye.